Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Evaluator Group video insight. My name is Kristen Maycomber. I'm a senior analyst covering data protection on the team. And joining me today is Randy Kearns, our senior strategist and consultant. Randy, thanks so much for joining today.
Thanks, Krista. This will be fun.
Awesome. It will be. So today we're going to be talking about what seems to be a never-ending pursuit in the storage market, and that is to drive down the total cost of ownership for data protection. Specifically, we're going to be talking about this today in the context of the hybrid cloud. We do hear this becoming an important topic for customers because a key reason we're seeing customers integrate public cloud resources into their data protection implementations is to cut down costs. Primarily, those are costs associated with, on-premises data protection infrastructure, including, buying, deploying, and managing the hardware and software directly. In fact, we recently fielded a research study on hybrid cloud adoption. And in that study, we found that 45% of respondents indicated that reducing overall storage costs is a major objective of tiering their data to the public cloud. Typically, we see this tiering happen for backup and long-term retention use cases, so that's why it's very relevant here in the context of data protection. Now, part of the problem is that if not handled correctly, costs can very easily escalate in the public cloud compared to on-prem. And in fact, 1 in 4 respondents in our study indicated that the hybrid cloud is more expensive than they initially expected. We do see surprise bills for customers. We see sprawl in usage, leading organizations to be unaware of everything that they're even spending in the cloud. And these are 2 things that come to mind as kind of key examples of these unexpected expenses. A big part of the problem that we see is the proliferation of incompatible cloud tools. What I mean by that is a reliance on the native tools that are provided by public cloud vendors. These are limited to that particular cloud environment, but IT today needs to protect a whole range of environments and services from different providers. So these might be on-prem private cloud infrastructures, they might be off-prem software as a service applications, they might be off-prem infrastructure as a service as well. And customers, they really need a third-party tool that is agnostic to all of these environments in order to really get that streamlined operational control and to really gain efficiencies across all of these different environments. So Randy, you do a lot of work with end users. What are you hearing specifically?
Well, first, exactly as you say, initially there was a lot about disaster recovery and putting a copy of backup data in the public cloud, and also moving inactive data, sometimes called archival data there, primarily because it's a lot of data, they didn't want it, and there was an expectation that it would be less expensive. But like you say, costs were a surprise to them in many cases, the cost of storage, but also the cost of using resources, instances of processors, et cetera. So people started looking at ways here to say, can I reduce the number of resources and only pay for when they're needed or on demand? The other one is looking at some automation around being able to move data to less costly storage in a public cloud based on its expected need. Mm-hmm. So those very much reinforce what you said. That's what customers were looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. I think certainly that concept of on-demand is a big one, and really the automation, because we are seeing the cloud is just so dynamic that these adjustments really need to be made as quickly as possible. And so we work closely with Veritas, and Veritas has actually added some capabilities in these areas into NetBackup, which for those who might not know is its data protection software. And Randy, as you know, you and I had the opportunity to evaluate this new version of NetBackup from the standpoint of cost economics in the cloud. Specifically, what we did was we looked at cloud resource utilization, and we looked at the efficiency of data reduction and transfer. But before we really get into these specific details in terms of what we evaluated, I did want to explain a little bit more about the NetBackup capabilities. I'm going to pull up on the slide here a chart that compares some of the new capabilities in this new version of NetBackup with the older version of NetBackup. And I'll give people just a few seconds to kind of read through it. I know it's a little bit of text to, again, just sort of acclimate. So this new version of NetBackup uses what Veritas has called its cloud scale architecture. So what that means is that the NetBackup architecture is now microservices based, and it can be deployed in either Azure or AWS. So it does have that scalability as well. Another important thing here is that it uses AI and machine learning in order to streamline the data protection and data management processes. So begin to get at some of that, really that intelligent automation, actually. So again, as I alluded to with our evaluation, we did specifically look at the ability to dynamically scale from a single instance up to the resources that are required to complete a parallel backup job, and then of course back down again. And we also looked at the ability to directly migrate data to the cloud without uncompressing and rehydrating it. Randy, you were really obviously an important architect on the model. Would you like to kind of talk a little bit more in terms of some of the assumptions that are built in here and things like that?
Yeah, that's really important to understand that most people hear a lot of claims, et cetera, but to make really informed evaluations and decisions, you really have to look at the economics. And this problem is rooted in economics, as we talked about. So we built an economic model, and the economic model considers all these factors, things such like for an average backup that's going to be done, the number of parallel backups, the cost of instances that you're going to have during these backups, and the amount of time spent, the amount of data, the average data reduction ratio, et cetera. We were able to obtain the average number across a broad spectrum from Veritas, and we factored these into the model. We also factored in the cost of the earlier generation of NetBackup and this new generation or the next generation of NetBackup in there, and we produced an economic model. So there's a chart here that shows this, and this is really a graph of the cumulative savings of auto scaling or dynamic scaling and the differences in cost with some degree of incrementals as you move forward in time. This is, the gift that keeps on giving, if you will, from the standpoint you save and you continue to build on this savings over time. So the effect of auto scaling and only paying for the resource you need as you need them is dramatic. It's a very compelling economic case, and that's what the TCO model has shown us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I know that unfortunately we're getting close to the end of our time here, but I think, the takeaway, at least from my perspective here, is that the, this sort of more dynamic scalability and really the ability to directly move or tier the data into the public cloud. Based on our kind of cost evaluations, we are seeing that these can really move the needle for customers. They really can end up, saving quite a bit at the end of the day. Of course, it is going to be dependent on the customer's particular environment and their particular needs. We will, with this video, include a link to the brief that we wrote up regarding the model, regarding our analysis, so that customers can learn a little bit more about these capabilities and the assumptions built into the model and things like that. But we would certainly encourage them to reach out to either to Evaluator Group or to Veritas to talk again a little bit more about their particular environment and the impact that some of these capabilities might have. And with that, on behalf of Randy and myself, I wanted to thank everyone for joining and for listening, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.